4 items. Last week, Human Rights Watch, the exemplary international human rights organization, published a report chronicling terrible acts of sexual violence and rape against young women and girls in Somalia, committed by troops under the aegis of the African Union. Human Rights Watch particularly identified troops from Uganda and Burundi. Now, Human Rights Watch is an excellent organization, and the documentation and research it does is absolutely unassailable, impeccable, so you can trust it. But not, of course, the African Union, who immediately issued a long letter of rationalization, effectively dismissing the charges of Human Rights Watch and pretending that they embrace the principle of zero tolerance for sexual violence. You have to ask yourself, why is it that these major international institutions, particularly the military, when they're faced with accusations of sexual violence, rather than saying they will investigate it immediately, are always absurdly defensive, invoking irresponsible, dismissive, cavalier, misogynist, and often implacable responses when it comes to violence against women? Never ends. Number 2. You probably see, as all of us see, that the Ebola virus continues to advance and the international community is paying attention, but not much of a response. And that's absolutely heartbreaking. And again, the question of why we can always have a violence in northern Iraq endorsed by the United States and NATO, not to mention the possibilities of war on the Ukrainian border, but never summon the intense human response to the tragedy that is occurring in Western Africa and where the world should be mobilized. It's interesting, isn't it, that the Gates Foundation has just announced $50 million to fight Ebola in West Africa, and Doctors Without Borders continues to be the organization on the ground doing most of the work. A private foundation and a private NGO responding with greater urgency to this human calamity than much of the rest of the international community. Number 3. Having conferred accolades on the Gates Foundation, I now must move quickly to amend the plaudits. You will have noticed that last week British Petroleum, BP, was indicated in front of a judge as having engaged in gross negligence and recklessness in the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico 4 years ago, and it looks as though they'll be fined up to $18 billion. And who holds millions and millions of shares and millions of dollars? Well, maybe it's not millions and millions of shares, maybe it's millions and millions of dollars of shares. In BP, Bill Gates. And who talks about the importance of the environment? Bill Gates. And who says that you have to combat global warming by reducing carbon discharge from oil companies? Bill Gates. I guess when you're rich enough, hypocrisy just doesn't matter. And finally, a tale of 2 leaders. I urge you to read the speech that was given by Prince Zayed of Jordan to the Human Rights Council in his inaugural address last week in Geneva. It is magnificent, particularly the first third and more, where he talks about the antecedents of his life which have brought him to his own definition of human rights. I haven't read as good a speech out of the United Nations in years. Juxtaposed to that was the interview given by the Secretary General of the United Nations to Jon Stewart on The Daily Show on Wednesday, September the 10th. It's on YouTube. I urge you to watch it. I make no comment, although you understand that when I make no comment, I'm speaking volumes. Watch it. YouTube. The Secretary General, Jon Stewart, September 10th. That was last week. I'm Stephen Lewis.